We're a group of GenXers learning about our ADHD and neurodiversity later in life. Join us as we discuss interesting clips we find online and how they relate to our own life experiences. Welcome to This Is How My Brain Works.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of This Is How My Brain Works. My name is Sarah Hines, and I am joined today by Krista Gano and Jason Rudofsky, who we call Rude. I am going to be sharing a small clip from Seoul Assassin, and Seoul is like the capital of South Korea. She talks about what it's like to be ADHD and what it means for our brains from a neurological standpoint, or she has a guest. She's listening to a video where she does that. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in, y'all, and I will catch you on the flip.
It took me taking a neurodevelopmental class in college before I understood what actually autism does to the brain structures. So, you were born with all the neurons you're going to get, but how these neurons talk is through synapses. From birth until you're like adolescence, your body goes through something called pruning, where it deletes and gets rid of all of the synapses that you do not use. Research has shown that this does not occur in people with autism. So we just have too many synapses in places that they're not supposed to be at. This is why autistic people tend to get overstimulated, because they have connections in the brain that would have been otherwise deleted in non-autistic people. Research also shows that our brain underreacts in areas that deal with emotional processing, language processing, and in the frontal lobe region, which deals with time perception and balance. Research also shows that we have larger amygdalas, which deals with fear and anxiety and processing those emotions. A lot of people are asking, well, I have ADHD. How do I know if I have autism? Well, the thing is, autism also involves the frontal lobe, which is mostly impacted with ADHD, so they will show similar symptoms. A lot of people ask the same with like BPD or OCD or anxiety. Those same regions are impacted with autism. So if you have those disorders that I just listed, you're more likely to have autism as well. This is also why I hate the idea of high function and low function. It's like, no, it's just the way your symptoms manifest.
So that was fun with the dogs, y'all. Sorry.
I didn't hear dogs.
Really?
Mm-mm. The first thing that came to mind with that, Sarah, that I thought was funny was that I remember when I have an allergy, for those many who don't know, to alcohol. So high school was super fun in college because I didn't really know and I just kept really like getting sick whenever I drank. But I used to joke that why would I ever get drunk? I don't want to kill the brain cells. I need every one I have. And maybe that's not true. Maybe I needed to kill some of them. I have too many. I don't know. But that's the thing the first instinct that I thought of when I heard that. It's interesting.
Right? It truly made my brains hurt a little bit. All my synapses went, we hear you and we don't like that. Rudy?
If they know that, why can't they eliminate some for people who struggle with certain things?
Which ones do you eliminate?
I would eliminate, for me,
your anxiety synapses,
your amygdala that's bigger, that they said?
Fear, anxiety, fear and anxiety.
They keep us safe. There's a purpose too, right? How do you prune just enough to not be jumping off a cliff that you then die?
I find this to be a possible story idea.
Oh.
But I know the thing about brain cells, like, I mean, that was right. Everyone's like, you're killing your brain cells. You'll have nothing left.
Oh, I have
nothing. You're just killing brain cells and they don't grow back. And you're going to be left with 2 brain cells. But the truth is, it doesn't have to do with brain cells. It doesn't have to do with brain cells. What it has to do with is whether or not we're ridding ourselves of those connections in our brain, or if they're melding together, and that's how we're. And that's interesting about allergies. I wonder how allergies, well, I get, you know how people like sometimes allergies just go away. They grow out of them. They
That's
grow
horrible.
out of the allergies.
That can even happen later in life. My grandmother became allergic to a lot of food stuff between the ages of like 75 and 85, and then they all went away. So yeah, it's just very weird. But I think the thing that I've been doing a lot of reading around or listening to people around this idea of self-diagnosis and whether it has merit or doesn't have merit, and sort of all these feelings that people have about self-diagnosis. And someone from England was talking about how she's choosing to not officially diagnose because she's lived in her body her whole life. She's pretty sure of what she has. She doesn't need someone else to tell her. But more importantly, there's no one out there really diagnosing adults with this. And if she were to, and she was in the UK, she's like, and so if she would have to, there was a 3-year waiting list in the UK for a doctor to do it. And then if she were to go outside of the system, it would be $7,000 for someone to tell her essentially what she already knows. And there is no treatment for autism, right? It's not like somebody's going to come out and go like, and here's a pill. It's not, she said, now getting the ADHD piece of the puzzle was important because it gave her some options for some choices in care. But with autism, it's just sort of being able to go around and flash your autism card and go, see, it's real. But all of this to come down to, one of the things that I've been troubled by in this conversation of self-diagnosis or not is this idea that if it is not debilitating, you don't have it. And there are people out there who are very, very attached to this idea that unless your ADHD is making you a non-functional human being, then it's not real.
It's so funny that you should say that, because I literally was late today because I got stuck on a rabbit hole of exactly this issue, where a woman finally had gotten to the doctor, the psychiatrist, because everyone in her life was like, you should be checked for ADHD. And the doctor spent the entire time, to your point, talking about how externally the impact was not visible. So he said, you finished college, you didn't switch majors, you've had a successful relationship in the last 12 months. Like, he gave all these external things. And then she's like, yeah, but I took Adderall. She was able to get a prescription for it, took the Adderall and said, for the first time in my life, I started the wash, I switched it, I folded it, and I put it away. And the relief was so overwhelming that I cried. And there were still people in her thing saying, well, you graduated college and you do all these other things, so externally, you're not impaired. And there was no question of personal feelings about being impaired. It's mind-boggling. It's truly
well, and it's sort of this idea too that I think we've come with healthcare in this country in general around if it's not at the levels of being extreme, like if you aren't dying from something, then you'll have to wait the 3 months for the surgery or whatever, which, I get it. It's just part of the system. But I think it's this idea, because I went to my doctor recently and I mentioned it to the doctor and she was sort of like, yeah, you seem fine. So, there we go. And I think, and I am fine. I'm super fine. We all are. But that doesn't take away from the sense that I have a brain that never shuts down. And that, one of the reasons why I used to do so much hot yoga was because you're fighting for your life in that hot yoga studio. So your brain shuts down. Like, I will play a stupid, nonsensical game on my phone for hours because it shuts my brain down. And
I love that you explain that, because I do that too, but to give a reason is a relief. I feel less
if I have to
myself,
deliver my virtual hot dogs, if I deliver my virtual hot dogs in 30 seconds, it might, my brain shuts down and I'm not. So what is someone's debilitating? The fact that I have, I guess what I would say is like, well, what if I get that I'm, and there's this big argument right now about higher functioning and lower functioning autism. And it's like, I get that you might see me as higher functioning, but and not debilitated because I still show up and do the things I'm supposed to do in society. But that doesn't mean they're not hard, that I'm not tired, that I don't struggle in ways you can't see. Like
and it doesn't mean I'm not taking it out on the people behind closed doors in my life who I feel safe around to just let the overwhelm explode. And that's not fair to them. And it's certainly, and if people need some external thing, then what it is I guarantee anybody who seems high functioning that there are people in their life who are where they feel safe and it doesn't seem high functioning. So like, for example,
well, and it's like that little test we took, Sarah. It's like when you take the test about autism on that little test that we all took, or that most of us took, I wasn't like in the super high areas. I also was in very solidly in the area. So because I wasn't super high, does that mean I don't deserve care or deserve to know or deserve to have a community?
no. I mean, I know that's a rhetorical question, but I'm still
Right.
going to.
Right.
Before we go too far afield, I just remembered that in college, I used to make the joke. I used to smoke a lot of marijuana. I don't anymore, y'all, listeners. And that's because personal choice. But I used to smoke a lot and people would say it's going to make you stupider or whatever they say. And I literally would say at the time, I need something to dull it because I'm operating up here and no one is up here with me. And I just look crazy and it's lonely and it's a lot. And
Ooh, girl, preach.
so I actually intentionally smoked weed so that I wouldn't be annoyingly perseverating all the time, which I still do. But
I
That is-
just read books and went into fantasy areas and then started writing.
see, I wanted people to talk with me about it. And
Yeah.
that's hard for them. Okay, Rudy, Mr. Quietude, the floor is yours.
We just don't know human beings. We don't know each other. We don't, unless, I mean, even the people you live with, you don't know it's very hard to get into one's brain. It's just very difficult. We don't know. Everyone looks like, for the most part, they're doing well. If they're outside of the home and you see them daily, coworkers, people, I mean, you see a lot of people and I mean, sometimes you're like, that person's not doing well. But for the most part, we're like, oh, they're going to work. They're just going to work. But we don't know really what's going on. We don't know what struggles they have. Even the people we live with, they don't know what sometimes we struggle with and what we need help with. I mean, it's taken a long time. I mean, Lisa keeps saying to me, if I had known some of the things, 10 years ago, maybe things would have been different, but I don't know what that means. But
Well, I think that
would have been
part
able
of that,
to support more, but
Yeah.
she's tremendously supportive, and she understands me a lot more.
but Rudy, if you would have known 10 years ago, how would it have, like it changed? I think for all of us would have known 10 years ago, there's a lot, I wonder, I mean, you can only wonder, but I wonder how much would have been different about how I weathered parenthood, working with
Oh,
others,
gosh, parenthood.
projects, like, I if I would have had, because once, there's that, was it Maya Angelou who said, once you know better, you do better. And so part of my grief, which I will label solidly as grief in this process, has been lamenting that I could have been better
Yes.
at relationships if I had understood myself more
Yes.
earlier.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry that your grief, that this is a strong feeling. And I think you and I and all of us, this idea that we could have been better, done better, is a dangerous way to phrase it. Because
Probably.
honestly, like I said, we did the best we could knowing what we could. But the part that hurts, and I think when you asked that question, Jason, it made me think, what would have changed because I knew something was up. I had, on the one hand, I had my one psychiatrist telling me that I think you might have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which in retrospect, with more knowledge, I don't have, but I understand why that looks like that. But what would have been different is I think I would have shown more grace for myself. And if that's what the takeaway is, I am going to show more grace for my past self as well. She did not need to do better. She did just as much as she could. And I'm hugging her. And the grief is for my children or the people in my life who were impacted by it. And maybe they didn't know why, and I didn't know why. So that's for me where the grief comes in. And to your point, I wish I had done better for them. But
that's very unexpectedly, knowing you, thoughtful and kind. But for me, because I'm so driven from also not just from from a career standpoint, for me, I do have regret, flat out, of not
regret
not
is different.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, no, the regret and grief for me live live close.
What I'm saying is I wish I had been better. That part of the regret and grief, I think, could be sheared off of it. Regret and grief still exist, but that judgment, that that part of it, I hope we can get rid of it. Like, it doesn't help. The grief is absolutely where we can sit and feel it, but adding that layer of judgment on top of it, I want to encourage us to let go of. And it's kind of hard to do that because I feel it too. That's why I'm agitating, because I too I could have been a contender. Thank you. That was our 90s or 80s reference. That was from, what was that from?
Could have been a contender.
Rocky.
Yeah.
Rocky.
Go out and rewatch Rocky, y'all. It really does hold up.
I mean, listen, the great news, this is the truth. If anyone younger is listening, which I know a few younger people who do listen, the great truth around that is that you always have time to clean up relationships and change patterns and become closer through some of those ways that you get to know yourself more and can relate differently to people. That's the type of stuff that's flexible, that sort of moves through. I think what you end up regretting ultimately is time. And
being anxious, so appreciative, kind of.
What? Being what?
What I regret is being anxious instead of being grateful. So like in those moments when the kids are doing all the things and I'm just and you don't enjoy the squishy thighs as much as you could have.
Yeah.
Or
it's the time. Like, I mean, that comes always back down to time too. It's like this idea that if I could go back, if someone said to me, you can go back 10 years, I wouldn't want to go back to high school. Good Lord. No way. But I'd take a 10. I'd take a tenner with this knowledge.
I'd like to go back.
I'd take 30. I'd take 30 plus.
30
plus.
I go right back to high school. Yep.
I'd go to elementary and I would show more kindness to people because I was struggling. I had a lot of sharp elbows and I really regret. I feel a lot of guilt about how unkind I was to other people struggling in my life.
Man, I wouldn't want to do high school again, especially if I had to, if I could go back and do high school in the 80s and 90s, then early 90s, then maybe, but I would not want to do high school with these kids are going through right now.
No smartphone for me.
No,
I'm just saying go back to high school, start high school again with the knowledge of how my brain works, with the knowledge that X, Y, and Z are too hard for me. Like, we've got to present it in a different way for me to excel in education. And the whole operation needs to change for me. And I'm sure half of the class. You know, like we're not operating well under these conditions. Although the conditions were, I was very lucky, and I was very lucky. And high school was, I know a lot of people have not great memories of high school. High school for me was great. I loved it. But knowing what I know now and how much I struggled, and then how I struggled in, just in education through 5 years of college, and the inability to sort of figure out exactly what I wanted to do, thinking that I needed to figure that out immediately. I mean, I would go back in a heartbeat.
Mhm.
I'd go back in a heartbeat. A lot of things would change, I think. A lot of things would change.
And
Like,
sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
And
were
you
gonna
talk
say
about
something?
time, just quickly, you talk about time.
Yeah.
I think about a lot of time wasted.
That's me. Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And it's a lot of time wasted because
how would you
I'm
typify
dumbfounded in thinking. Say again?
what does wasted time mean for you? Like give us an example of something like that you wasted time at. Like, so I see it sometimes as we say, it's a puritanical work ethic. We wasted time because I was laying in a field staring at clouds. Or what do you mean?
No, I wasted time being ineffective. So when you look at where I am in my career and where I wish I was, which is actually not that far away, but it is enough. It's enough that I see the difference. Like if I had understood the way I needed to network differently because my brain works differently, I could have created those spaces for myself to be more effective. I have been less effective at communicate as effective as I am in communication. I have been less effective and less time has been wasted because I just didn't understand what was happening. And so the greatest empowerment actually that I feel now, starting to unwind this and understand it, is that I just wish that I would have been given the privilege of some level of understanding that about that piece of the puzzle about myself earlier.
What
And
would that piece of the puzzle, so like what could you have told or known? What is it? Sorry to
the ADHD, like I like to not have so much because I don't want to put it in worry or shame. I don't think it's that, but to understand when I'm masking, when I'm not, what the purpose of it is, when I can have grace for myself because I was just put through something, why I shut down after certain things, why I get overwhelmed, just understanding that stuff, which I've learned over just now the past year and a half or so, has been 100%. My creativity has changed because I understand my ebbs and flows better, and I've got better, more grace for myself. And I guess what I was writing down when Rudy was talking is that, when people poo-poo this self-diagnosis thing, I want to be clear. I've lived in this body my whole life and no one has ever seen it. And I want to say that aggressively. So I've never been diagnosed. I've been told I'm just smart, or I'm just this, or I'm just driven, or I'm just this. Like I've never been diagnosed. So I don't understand why diagnosing me right now, quite frankly, from a healthcare perspective where I don't trust a portion of it anyway, is helpful. So, because it's no one's ever caught it, because you know why? Because I'm a freaking great masker. And I didn't even understand how good I was until I understood what masking was, which is what I understood through us learning this. And then I went to a doctor's appointment the other day and I sat there and almost watched myself outside of myself mask the fuck out of that appointment. And sitting there hearing myself going like, you're doing it. Stop doing it. Stop doing that thing.
Yeah. So as someone who's not great at masking when I need to advocate for myself, I can see the doctor's eyes glaze over every time. When I'm giving them the information that they need, I see them not taking it in because it's too much for them. So
this just happened to my best friend. She had a doctor's appointment for an issue, and I won't say what it is because I know she listens to this. But then she called back because she said it's not going away. What do I need to do? And they said, well, you don't have these 3 things, so therefore we don't. And she said she went and opened up her file or whatever online, and she was like, I told the doctor the exact opposite. The exact opposite. So I said, I have these 3 things. They wrote it down as she doesn't have these 3 things. So
Yes, that's what it's like to not mask. Because honestly, to get the result I need, I have found I have to mask and present it the way that it looks neurotypical. Anyway, anger.
So right. And so I'm saying, so I guess for all of those people who might be listening who say that self-diagnosis is not valid, I want to be very clear. I think diagnosis is incredibly valid, especially for those who can get it and want it and all those things. But I love doctors, so I don't want to be down doctors because I've worked with doctors for a long time and they're for the most part great human beings. But I have never had a champion as a doctor for me. And so I don't know why that is going to be the place I go to try to find strategies that work for me now that I understand my brain more clearly.
Yeah. Rudy, parting thoughts?
I just want to know if Krista still has the alcohol allergy.
I have not tried. I start to project.
I mean, like this afternoon seemed like a perfect time for just a little nip. I mean, I've just sat back and listened, but it's like I would pour a little something. I don't.
I projectile vomit, so
I mean,
it's not a fun trial.
It sounds like a happy hour. If someone was like this, hey, we're going to I'd be like this, yeah.
I vote
I'll meet you
that
there.
Rudy shows up and is sits in front of Krista after she drinks a little bit to see what happens.
I projectile vomit. It's super not fun. I don't want to do it. So, but no, I have not tried it in a really long time. And I hate the taste of it. So why would I try it? It's gross.
Well, you can mix it with stuff. Tastes like orange.
You can just give me chips and queso and it's the same effect.
Perfect. Yeah. That's a happy hour. That's also part of the happy hour situation.
So we want to thank you all for listening again. And we especially appreciate Soul Assassin for highlighting this clip about our synapses and how many connections we're making. And if that feels like you, we'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have a great weekend. Bye.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. For more info on today's clip, the hosts, and our podcast, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening.